Number.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We are learning Mishnah's Pesachim, Perek Dalet, Chapter 4, Mishna Gimel, Mishna 3. Okay. There is a halacha that one may not rent or lend large animals, large livestock, to a person who is not Jewish. Since the Jew still owns the animal, when the non-Jew will work the animal on Shabbos, the Jewish owner will violate the mitzvah of making sure animals rest on Shabbos. We have to make sure our animals do not do the forbidden activities that we may not do. So if you were to go ahead and lend the animal to a non-Jew, he's going to use it on Shabbos. It's still yours because it's only on loan. And it comes to then your animal is doing work on Shabbos. And therefore, there is a halacha that you may not lend or rent large animals, meaning the kind of animals you do work with, to a non-Jew, or as they call them here, an idolater. Now, because of this halacha, there were certain precautionary measures that the sages instituted to protect people from coming to that. And what's going to be interesting in this Mishnah is that we're going to see something we don't usually see, and that is we're going to have a rabbinic decree, and we're going to have more decrees in order to uphold the rabbinic decree, which is not typically what you find. But there are circumstances where the sages felt that if they don't kind of extend their decree, it's not going to last. So therefore, the Mishnah is like this. In a place where the custom is to sell small animals, small livestock, which means sheep and goats that you don't use them for work. They're a place where the custom is to sell a small animal, small livestock to a non-Jew, we sell it. It's if where you are they do that, fine. But in a place where the custom is not to sell, then you have to follow that custom and not sell. Now, the basis for why there would be such a custom not to do this, not to sell even small livestock, is because the Mishnah continues of B'chol Makayim, and anywhere, wherever you may be, you cannot sell to the idolater a large animal, a work animal. And the reason why we may not sell a large animal to a non-Jew is because the problem is that you may be trying to sell it to him and he's not going to go for it. And at the end, you'll end up renting it to him, maybe even lending it to him. If we allow you to sell large animals, then we're afraid that you may come to lend them or to rent them out. And that would go into the problem we said before. It's your animal. He's going to be using it on Shabbos. Your animal's not resting on Shabbos. So therefore, that's a rabbinic decree. Those animals, the large animals, you may not sell because of what we just said. You may not sell because as a precautionary measure so that you don't come to lend them out or rent them out. The sages did not include in their prohibition small animals like the goats and the sheep because they're not used for work. And therefore, there's not going to be a problem. Nonetheless, there were places that practiced not to even sell small animals as an extra precautionary measure, that if you're going to be able to sell small animals, you may come to sell the big animals, which we don't want you doing, lest you come to lend or rent the large animals. So it's really not, a rabbinic decree, as I said before. This is a custom that people took on in order to protect themselves from coming to any problems. Now, the Mishnah continues, Agolem usiyachim. Now, we say you cannot sell a large animal. What if it's an egel, it's a calf, right? Right? Cows start off as calves. Horses start off as siyachim, which means foals, right? Baby horse. Those animals aren't used for work. Can you go ahead and sell those animals? And the answer is, even that's included. Anywhere you may not sell a large animal, agola misyachim, or the calves or the foals, even when they are babies. Why? Because they start off as babies and then they get bigger and then they're worked with. So again, this is an extra step. This is one step removed because we're talking about that they're not going to work now. But since they are the types of animals that will work, so therefore, again, they are included in this decree to make sure that we don't come to sell them when they're larger, which we don't want you to do, lest you come to rent or sell them and lend them out. So too included in the decree is shleimin u'shvurin, whole animals or broken animals. Let's say the animal has a broken limb. Can't work. So maybe you would say, so go ahead and sell that animal. It can't work anyway. The answer is no. This is all part of the rabbinic decree, this extra step to say that when they said no large animals across the board, no large animals. So that's really not necessarily a decree for a decree, but again, it's adding layers for the purpose of preventing coming to the real problem. And therefore, they said no selling large animals, even when they're babies, and even if they can't actually do work.
Well, these are domesticated animals.
Yeah. Rabbi Yehuda mater b'shvura. Rabbi Yehuda permits you to sell a maimed animal, an animal with a broken limb. Can't work. Can't ever work, right? He actually agrees about the baby animals, that there the problem is, they're going to turn into big animals. He's going to keep them until they become big and work with them. And therefore, we don't want you selling the baby animals because, again, you may bring you to think that you could sell the large animals too. But once you're dealing with an animal that can never work again, says Rabbi Yehuda, you don't have to worry about that being mixed up with other animals. And then the Mishnah concludes, Bebeseira mater basus. Bebeseira says you can sell them a horse. Horses are different. Why? Because horses usually are used for riding. And actually, we have if a person rides, if your animal, if somebody rides on your animal on Shabbos, you're not going to be transgressing a Torah prohibition of your animal doing work. Because what would be the work that the animal is doing and somebody's riding on it? The animal is carrying the person, right? But we have a rule called Chai Noisei Es Atzmai. A living person carries himself. Basically, the point is that a rider supports his own weight, and that detracts from the act of the carrier, and therefore the carrier is not liable for carrying. So it comes out then, Rabbi Meseira says, the usual usage of a horse is for riding. If at the end of the day, the non-Jew lands up riding your horse, you're not transgressing a Torah prohibition anyway. So therefore, he says, horses aren't an issue. Now, again, the previous sages in the Mishnah didn't agree with that. Tanakama says, no large animals. That includes horses. That's because, according to the Tanakama, there are horses that do work. And therefore, since there are horses that do work, we're concerned if you sell any horse, then again, it can lead to this problem of eventually, or of the possibility of coming out that people will think you could sell, and by selling, they may come to lend or rent out, buy a horse, which does work, which would then create a problem. So even though usually the horses are for riding, not for working, the Tanakama included horses because of what I think he feels may not be the usual usage, but enough of a usage to have to be concerned that we say don't even sell the horse. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful Shabbos.
Thank you very much.
So horses were.
So what?